Hello, I'm Joel Deering with the International Volleyball Hall of Fame. We're speaking today with members of the induction class for 2015. This is Volleyball in Perspective. And I'm joined by Lloy of the United States. Lloy, welcome. Welcome back, because you've been in Springfield, Holyoke area before. You're being inducted for an amazing playing career where, among many achievements, you are the first and only four-time volleyball Olympian from the U.S. men's indoor team, competing in the games in 1996, 2000, 2004, and capping off your run in Beijing in 2008 with a gold medal. You gained attention early during your outstanding collegiate experience at IPFW while playing for your father, Arnie. You were selected as the NCAA Freshman of the Year and 3 times as an All-American while leading your Volley Dons to 3 NCAA tournaments. In your final year with the U.S. men's team, you not only garnered Olympic gold, but you were also named as MVP and Best Setter of the World League for leading your team to that title just prior to the Olympic Games. During your international career, you were often named as the world's best setter and server, and your durability as an athlete was evident both during and beyond your 14 years with the U.S. men's program, as you also played professionally in Japan, Greece, Italy, and Russia, and participated on many teams that medaled in the CEV Championship League, and included a gold medal for your Russian club in 2007 and 8. So let's start at the beginning. When did you get started in sports, and when did you start playing volleyball?
First, I want to say what a great honor it is, obviously, to be sitting here with you, but also being inducted with 3 legends of the game, 3 fantastic Brazilian athletes that have impacted the game so much. So that's a great honor in itself. You know, volleyball's been around my house for a long time. You know, my dad started playing at Ball State back in the late 60s for Coach Sondel, then started coaching in high school in the Allen County, Fort Wayne area. So since about the age of 4, we've had some kind of netting and some kind of balloon volleyball up in the house out there in Little Woodburn, Indiana, batting it around. Followed him on every trip as he coached high school girls and boys, and then obviously started the program at IPFW. It's always kind of been in our family, in our blood. But we played multiple sports growing up, but volleyball always had a special place, obviously in my heart, because it had a special place in my dad's heart too.
Yeah. And so we know you were quite accomplished in basketball. So when did that focus on volleyball, kind of where you decided I'm going to specialize, I'm going to focus my attention there? When did that happen?
Well, if you're 6'8" in Indiana, you don't play little basketball. They pretty much run you out of town. And so I played, like I said, multiple sports, but basketball and volleyball had the best synergy. I enjoyed them both immensely. But I remember to this day, you know, for some reason they thought I needed a press conference as a senior in high school to tell everybody what I was going to do. Being recruited by Coach Knight, obviously recruited by some great collegiate programs for volleyball as well. And leading up to that night, as we sat at the dinner table, my mom and dad and I had no idea what I was going to say the next day. And so I remember thinking, okay, I'll just go to bed, I'll pray on it a little bit. And my dad said, right as I'm walking off, you'd be a fool not to play for Coach Knight. So that's what I got sent to bed with. And I woke up in the morning with a clear mind, clear conscience, walked in Woodland High School and said, I'm going to play for my dad. And it was the best decision I ever made, and I haven't looked back since.
Yeah. So what were the highlights for playing for your father?
Well, I'm guessing his highlights and my highlights may be a little different, because coaching your son, as I now can attest to, is not always an easy challenge. Highlight, obviously, winning that first MIVA. You know, Ball State had beat us, I think, 33 times in a row prior to my freshman year. And as a kid growing up, as Dad came home angry from all those matches, obviously I was aware that Ball State was the enemy. And so even to this day, I hold a little spot somewhere deep in my heart that I don't care for them very much. But they were a great program, constantly defeating Dad. And so that first MIVA in '91, going to Ball State, winning in the 5th set to send us to Hawaii for our first Final Four, was by far the biggest and first highlight of that career. And after that, we were blessed to have great teams and go to 2 more Final Fours. Unfortunately, couldn't get Dad the big prize that I always hoped, but very happy with my 4 years with my dad. Learned that hands down, and I've had some great ones, best coach I've ever known. His passion for the game obviously transcended to me, and hopefully transcends down to my kids as well.
That's great. So we know that we're going to talk about your international playing career, but when did you know? When did you know that you could do that you could get to that level?
You know, it actually came probably, I constantly was going out in the summertime, playing for World University Games teams. They used to have Olympic festivals back there, national B teams they used to call them. I remember as a junior in high school, Coach Neville, who was coaching Bill Neville, coaching the United States team at the time. Scott Fortune, recently out of Stanford, broke his leg. All the other college kids were playing. He calls me and says, "Hey, would you like to go to Japan on a trip with the national team?" And I was like, "Yeah." And so I show up there in San Diego. We fly out there. They gave me number 15, which happened to be Coach Karai's number, who just left the team. No pressure there. And I was more the glorified water boy. But having seen and go to Japan and play in front of 10,000, 12,000 people at a time really started to pique my interest. And that made that decision at 18 a little easier. A lot of kids in Indiana grew up thinking, "Hey, I want to play in the NBA, I want to do this." As much as I love basketball, ever since watching Marlowe run around with the flag over his head, us winning in '88 and '84, I knew that wearing USA on my chest meant a little more than wearing any kind of NBA uniform. And so, yeah, I've always had real peace of mind with that choice.
So in the early 1990s, it was still not that fashionable to take your tallest player and make him a setter. And Peter Belanger of the Netherlands probably hit the international scene a little before you, which was significant for all of us watching the game, and you were right on the heels. So what was your impression about it all? How did that happen? What was your thought in terms of what you wanted to play on the court? And that's a real change in the sport.
It really was. Peter, who I also consider a friend, a great setter, and obviously winning the gold in '96 with the Dutch in Atlanta. A lot of people wrote a lot of things about that at the time, whether it be a resemblance to to Magic Johnson, 6'9" point guard. And, in basketball, volleyball, we're kind of the point guard running the play as the setter. The big reason people always thought was the fact, hey, it's another huge guy in right front blocking against a left side hitter. And to be honest, I was an on and off again blocker even at my size. But to me, what changed the game the most is now all those passes that were on top of the tape going over were perfect passes for us. And so now the quick tempo is happening faster, the pipe's happening faster, and the block has a less time to react to what's happening, so it gave us a huge advantage. Me saving those overpasses and running a fast offense gave our hitters much better hitting situations. So I think that aspect and being able to pass the ball tight and keep the offensive fast was probably the biggest difference that Peter and I helped change.
So I get to see you play a lot, even in my own gym. And I actually remember that jump serve. I remember sitting there watching your jump serve when you were at IPFW, and it was a force. But what do you think your strengths were as a player?
Yeah, and compared to how they're hitting it today, it probably seems like underhand serve, to be honest with you. But yeah, I think for one, being able to get that ball tight to net, I've always been real good at setting the first tempo, the quick, and I think that's a key to any successful side-out game. So I've always tried to utilize that. To be honest with you, and I don't know why, if it's because my dad was shorter or because I grew up around girls volleyball, I was actually a really good defensive player for being 6'8". So I think that helped. And then obviously the development of the jump serve. I mean, Coach talked about it earlier, watching guys like Zorzi and Timmons and those guys and Powers kind of start it. And then we just took it to a new level, being a little more aggressive, not worrying so much for the air and putting some power on it. So I think besides jump serving, quick tempo offense, and probably a little defense, those are the three things that I contribute probably being the best part of my setting career.
So a lot of teammates, a lot of USA teammates. Pick a couple that you really enjoyed playing with and maybe why.
First and foremost, probably the legend, Bob Staverlik. A kid from Woodburn, Indiana, coming in there to a gym, and I'll never forget the first practice as I'm running around, next to Bob, already trying to soak in as much knowledge and competitiveness as I can. It took him about a whole 3 months to realize I didn't go to Ball State University, and I didn't correct him, when he said it. But to learn the kind of intensity that it took to play at that level. In college, we're all kind of athletic. We're all, enjoying the social aspects of college as well as playing ball. But when you're playing for your country and you're playing professionally, it adds a whole new level of competitiveness. And I learned that from Bob really, really quickly. He demanded so much out of himself that it just carried over to the team. And so that was a real great place to start for me in '96. Through the years, I've been blessed enough to play multiple Olympics with guys like Ryan Millar, Tom Hoff, who I consider friends. But the biggest blessing I had was Clay Stanley. And it was funny, Coach mentioned his dad, who was on the '68 team, one of the best blockers ever. Clayton and I are still good friends. I was in his wedding and probably conversed with him once or twice a week. And we played 6 years together overseas as well. And so that was one of the things, a lot of times when we play in these teams, friendships don't always last because people go separate ways. But that's one friendship that I am so lucky to have. Not to mention, it's not bad to have a 6'8", 240-pound guy behind you to set high balls to. And for some reason, I was one of the only guys that really ever got dialed in Clay's set. As the speed of the game came to fruition, Clay still liked it a little higher, a little slower. Coaches try to get him to change, saying you're going to have 2-3 blockers all the time. And my point was, does it matter? They can all go over there. Clay's still going to get the kill. And so some great teammates that gave me some friendship as well as some advice in my career along the way.
So there's Olympic games and matches, and there's Olympic experiences. Mm-hmm. So what was your greatest moment, and maybe even what was your greatest experience?
I tell people, people always assume that winning, was hands down the greatest. And there's a bunch, and obviously that's towards the top. But the one that probably still gives me goosebumps the most is my very first one in Atlanta. It's something to be said, and the Brazilians will get to experience this next year, playing the Olympics in your home country. And I remember walking into the renovated Jacobs Field down in Atlanta. We were right in front of the dream team, legends of the game behind us, knowing that my mom and dad were in the 120,000 people. My wife-to-be was in there as well. And every clap and every camera flash just felt like it was for me. It was by far the most amazing experience, and one I tell to a lot of kids I work with now, of the games. And then there's some good and bad ones in between. Obviously at the end, not even the moment of winning the gold medal in Beijing, but the seconds after, running in the arms of my wife and my son, who at the time was 7, having them there in China with me, my mom and dad, and then on the podium, Bob Staverlik put the medal around my neck, and then singing the national anthem. Those are emotions that will never be lost.
And that team made it exciting. I had to go back and double check. Yeah. Serbia, 5 sets, yeah. 15-12, I think. Russia, 5 sets, 15-13. And then we had Brazil, yeah. And 3-1, but highly competitive. So talk about that last, really the final matches. And what was it like within that team?
Well, that Olympics is iconic for a lot of reasons, just besides us winning. Obviously, the tragedy that happened with Hugh McCutcheon's family to start it, so we're without our head coach for the first 4 games. Ron Larson stepped in, did a great job. Luckily, we were a veteran crew, and so we were able to handle some of that ourselves. But there was a lot of times just in the pool play where we could have gone downhill, and it didn't happen. People always say, the gold medal is the most important game. It's not actually true. It's that quarterfinal, because if you don't win that, there's no chance of any medal. And sure enough, we run into a Serbian team who won the Olympics in 2000, has one of the best opposites, and even Malinkovic on it. And so I knew that'd be a battle. We're down 1-2 in sets. And so we were lucky enough to get through that match. And then we go to an opponent in Russia who we'd lost 9 times to in a row. Go up 2-0. World is wonderful. Hour later, I can see my wife over there in tears because it's 2-2. And, point by point until we get David Lee a little fired up, and he makes a one-on-one block and gets a couple kills, and we get that in. And to be honest, I enjoyed the Brazilian match the most because I was the most relaxed. We were one of the few teams that have success against them. To be honest, I kind of figured either way I'm getting out of here with a medal. And so we just played relaxed, played well, and sure enough got it done. But a magical ride.
A lot of different coaches. You played for a lot of different coaches. Talk about maybe the highlights of that and the adjusting from coach to coach.
People ask me now as I coach kids and I coach club or coach them, I think, how do you get all these philosophies? And kind of like when you're a student, go to school, have all these different teachers, you have all these different coaches, you kind of take all their ideologies and mash them together in your own philosophy of coaching. And I've been blessed to be with a bunch of good ones, from Bill Neville at the beginning to Coach Sturm to obviously Doug Beal. Vladimir Alekno, who coached the Olympic gold medal team in Russia, was my club coach over there. Daniel Bagnoli, Lorenzetti. I mean, I could go on and on. All these coaches have different philosophies, and I'd be lying if I said we always saw head-to-head on how that's supposed to be played out. But it really, over time, and it's probably why I had more success later in my career than earlier, that I developed the right philosophy on how Lloy Ball should set and lead a team. And so in some aspect, from my dad in college to all those professional and USA coaches, they all somehow affected the final result of where I ended up.
So how did you see that? Being a leader on the court, and as coaches, we are always looking for that. So what do you think, made you a good leader on the court?
I credit actually Hugh McCutcheon, who was our coach in 2008. he finally saw that, I had been captain for 10 years with USA Volleyball. And while a great honor, it's a huge burden and responsibility to go to every press conference, every interview, every coach's meeting, every captain's meeting. Meanwhile, you have to watch a video because you're the starting setter and trying to organize the offense. And so it became overwhelming, to be honest. And I didn't even notice it. And when Hugh said, hey, I think Tom Hoff should be captain, and how about you just set for us? It was like a different person. And I could focus in on what my true job was, and that was to set the team inside out. And I think you could see that in the way I played and relaxed during that Beijing Olympics.
Let's talk about the opponents. Give us your top ranking. Who's in the top 2 or 3 you ever played against?
Yeah, well, I can tell you one, while I have immense respect for Brazil, I loved playing against them. I mean, I really wanted to beat them every time. They were the powerhouse for kind of the 10 years that I was a main guy at USA Volleyball. And so, all their jumping around and running around and celebrating, it got to us. And so we definitely wanted to have our best performance against them. Same with the Italians, like Brazil, they play with a lot of passion and energy. And up until recently, the USA, tried to be a little more focused, a little more straight and narrow, but they'd always get us fired up a little bit, so I always enjoyed those matches. Cuba was a force when I was playing with Norsekas. They had athletes, so that was always a great match. The Russians, I really feel blessed the fact that, there was 10 to 12 great teams during my era. That was never a dull moment. And so to say, I probably have to say Brazil was my favorite team to play, and it was my absolute choice to win against in the gold medal. And so that was a great kind of closure for that relationship with them.
How about just a highlight from the professional career outside of the United States?
You had mentioned it for sure. '08 was kind of my year. Between World League and then Olympics and my Russian team, I had been to the Champions League finals 4 times and finished second 4 times. A dubious honor, to say the least. And so when my Russian team got back there and we finally won in front of 20,000 Polish fans in Lodz, Poland, it was by far the highlight of my club career. And the fact I got to share it with legends of the game like Sergei Tatukin and Alexander Bogomolov and Clay Stanley made it even more special.
Now, I know a lot of the travel you did playing, you saw a lot of the inside of a gym, but what favorite spot you ever were able to go to?
Yeah, Las Palmas, Spain. We played World League against Spain, and there was the Gran Canary Islands down there, and it was the bluest water I've ever seen, and the beaches were great. We lost in 5 sets, unfortunately, but by far the most beautiful place I've ever been, and I've been to a bunch.
So I understand you've reunited with some former college teammates, had some recent success in the Open division.
That's right.
USA Volleyball Nationals. Talk about that.
Just an old guy trying to have one more year in the sun, although my team gets younger every year, minus me, of course. No, I never got a chance to play in a lot of USAV National Opens because of obviously the career, and it's just not a smart choice, and Doug Beal probably would have kicked me out of USA Volleyball if we did. But once I retired, I wanted to make it a point, we have a great tradition at IPFW, and a lot of those guys stick around. And so we started training together in January, and all of a sudden the Nationals came up in Louisville, which is only a 4-hour drive. I said, you know what? They're having this PVL thing starting. There's the Open. Let's go down there. And sure enough, we get all the way through the finals and lose in a double final to somebody. And so the next year we say, hey, this PVL, let's get in that thing. And so we do. We go out to Arizona, finish 4th, and this year was in Detroit nearby. And so the team, and we end up winning this year. And so the Team Pineapple, which is my company, is made up of exclusively Midwest guys. We had 14 guys, 11 went to IPFW. Had to put a couple Cardinals, Ball State Cardinals in there because we didn't have any middles, but they're still Midwest guys. And we just try to represent our region, the Hoosier region. We have a good time. We're pretty talented, and hopefully add a little excitement and light to an up-and-coming league at the PVL.
So a couple more questions. The future of the game. What do you see ahead for the sport of volleyball?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I really don't know. I wrote a book after '08, and I wasn't real complimentary to where I thought the game was going just because it's so difficult. While it's awesome the things Title IX did for the women's game, we really haven't had that kind of movement in the men's game, and we seem to pick up a program, lose a program. And I know we talk a lot about, the NAIA D3 programs are picking up, but Division I and II aren't. And so, my son plays, but I worry about that if there'll be a place for him to play by the time he's out of school. And so we do our best at grassroots to try to promote boys sports and get those going. You know, having said that, with the lack of teams we have now, we still have 3 gold medals in men's volleyball. So, and yet with all these women teams, we haven't won yet, although I think Karch and his team's on the right path for this up and coming. And so I guess I'm not sure. I'm just going to try to do my part in my area and help promote it for my kids' sake and my area, and then hopefully they'll continue to have opportunities for it.
So final question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about being inducted into the International Volleyball Hall of Fame?
Once again, to be honest, it's bittersweet. It's sweet because it's an unbelievable honor. You know, I look down the list of names who are inducted here, and it's humbling to be on that list. It's bitter because it definitely puts closure on a career. You know, there's no going back to play once you're in the hall. And so, but I also know for my family, you know, having my children here, my wife here, my dad will be here, you know, for the induction. So it's an emotional, very special time for us.
It's a special time for us to have you, so congratulations.
Thank you.
We've been speaking with International Volleyball Hall of Fame Class of 2015 honoree Lloy Ball. This is Volleyball in Perspective, and I'm your host, Joel Deering. Thank you for watching.